everyone. Welcome to One Drum Computer Day. This is Steve. This is my little studio. As you might know, I'm kind of a drum computer addict. So a lot of people were asking me for some video footage or for some audio footage or whatever. So I decided to start this little YouTube channel you hopefully enjoy. Today is a very special episode because this is actually the first video about a drum machine, and it was pretty tough to decide from my collection to not take the obvious ones or whatever, or the ones where you have like 20,000 YouTube videos. So I decided to start with this little machine from Italy. It's the Viscount r64, and this is the very rare S version. I choose this one because I love the design and I took it for the picture of my channel. It has a brother, which is the r64, and believe me, this is just exactly the same machine. The only difference is the paint job, but you must agree that the paint job on the S version, it probably stands for like sport, like a sports car. It's much more 80s and looks pretty nice. So let's have a closer look. Alright, I just fired up the Viscount, and luckily it's still working. Viscount was kind of an organ company in the 80s and 90s from Italy, I think. I don't even know if they are still around, but you will tell me. This machine was probably built like in 85 or 86. I didn't find any exact date. So Viscount decided to have a little piece of the drum machine cake in the 80s, so they came up with the r64 and this much more rare r64s version. So the 64 is for 64 presets. That means you can't program your own beats, but you have some nice options like this little mixer on top of here. So you can dial in the volume for your bass drum, you can dial in the volume for snare, here for a group of like hi-hat, bongo, cowbell, tom, rimshot, and also for conga, tom-2, clave, go-go, cymbals, and most importantly the hand clap. Not to forget the cowbell, of course, which is very important in any digital drum machine, or in any, probably in any drum machine. But that's not all. You have a volume, you have your tempo, you have a nice display for your beat. And you have some options to change the pattern of the hand claps, and also you can cancel some sounds. So if you don't want to have some bongo action, you can actually just switch it off. Alright, I have set it to Rock 2, and I don't think I did mention that in total you have like 11 samples, and they are of course 8-bit, and I think you have 6 voices, which is also not too bad. This machine has a very funky, distinctive sound, so I think I press play, see what happens. So let's bring it down a notch. That's Rock 2. And as I mentioned, you can change the volume of the sounds, so you can take out the kick or you can bring it up. It's actually quite nice bass drum on this one. I will just flip to some rhythms and maybe play around here with different cancel options and different hand claps. So let's go to funky rock. That sounds very promising. Yeah. So I can switch out the hand clap, bring it up, nice hand clap here, but I can also choose a different hand clap, which is even more funky. If I don't like the bongos, I can cancel those, and I get this nice little almost electro beat. Which I like a lot. Bring up the cymbals a bit. Maybe take out the snare, so we only have the clap. Bring back the bongos. and dial in a nice little break. Okay, my brake button is broken, so it has to go back to my doctor. Alright, let's see what else do we have also with the disco section. Slow rock, hard rock. Here's the disco. So let's see what happens. I actually used one of the disco beats for my band Arctic Sunrise, so I might dial up the Cubase project in a few to show you how I used it. But let's just enjoy some disco action here. Alright, I think that's quite enough to get a first impression of this little funky machine. I love it a lot, and I searched forever for this version, and when it actually arrived it was like completely fucked up due to bad packaging, and thanks to Doc Analog, to Thomas Siedler, he fixed even like the cracked PCB, which was a tough one. I might have to bring it back because of the brake button, but okay, so far I can live with it. Let's have a little look on the back side here, which is not usual because you have a lot of connections here, and the cool thing is you have trigger out and trigger in, which I think is pretty cool. So you can actually trigger external stuff like drum synths, or you can trigger your arpeggiator from like your Juno synthesizer or whatever, but you can also sync this machine very easily with like the right interface, so you can even sync it to MIDI. You have different foot switches, so you can press start, you can trigger the brake with your foot switch, and what I find quite funny is that you can solo the hand clap with a pedal, so you can actually use 3 pedals to really perform with this machine. And then we have, of course, phones out and left right out, and also one external out for the snare, so you can treat the snare with like a reverb or whatever. Alright, that was a quick overview. As I mentioned, I will check out this Cubase project and maybe record like a couple of beats just with a proper audio interface to my phone, so it sounds a little bit better. Alright, as promised, I just loaded in one session in Cubase, which is a song by Arctic Sunrise, which is my band with Thorsten Verlinden. If you don't know it, yeah, check it out. And this was actually started by one pattern from the Viscount drum machine, from the r64s, which I just showed you in this little video. And I used this little pattern here, which sounds kind of funny or stupid on its own, but I added this little reverb, and then I really had to beef it up because the machine really sounds like very bone dry and 80s, so not much low end. So I used kind of a long chain of plugins. I just switched them on. I used this little Chandler EQ from the Universal Audio powered plugins. I used this limiter from IK Multimedia from T-Rex, which I like a lot. It's the Stealth limiter. And since the machine was missing like any kind of bass, I used the Voice of God, which looked like this, and then I beefed it up with the Virtual Tape Machine by Stephen Slate, which I also like a lot. And still it was missing like this low end, so I used another plugin which is called the Low Air from Waves, and this creates more low end. And what else? Let's see, there's the Virtual Mix Rack, also from Stephen Slate, and I used the Air EQ, which I like a lot. And what else? And at the end of the chain I even used isotope, which I also like a lot, and I don't know exactly what I used here. I used the exciter to get some more mids and some sparkling in the highs, and then it suddenly sounds like this. So yeah, it sounds kind of beefier. Let's try to close all those windows here and show what else I did. I took, I think, a second pattern. It's been a while since I opened up this song. This was also the R64, but for this one I used a special effect device which is called the Eventide DSP. At this time it was the DSP 4500, so it has this nice reverb. And then I used both together, and then they sound like this. And then I used a couple of more drum sounds to beef it up, and what came out of it was this beat. And maybe when I find the bass line here, let me see where it is. Alright, finally after 10 minutes I found my bass lines and a couple of sequencer stuff going, and together with this drum loop it starts to sound more like a song, which I'm going to play you right now, just a tiny bit. Alright, that's it. That was my very special first video for One Drum Computer Day. That's the way how I use those old little boxes. So sometimes I just grab them out of my shelf and plug them in and find some weird rhythms, and I actually make music with them, with Arctic Sunrise. If you got curious, yeah, check it out, and see you next time.